My son emailed, "Your presence will upset her." I stood beside him anyway. Before telling you all my story, write to me in the comments from where you are listening to me. My name is Clara Martinez. I'm 42 years old, and I've been a registered nurse at Denver General Hospital for the past 20 years. If you had told me 5 years ago that my own son would one day email me to stay away from his hospital bed, I would have laughed and said you were crazy. But here I am, staring at my phone screen at 2:47 a.m., reading those exact words. "Mom, please don't come to the hospital. Your presence will upset Melissa, and that might interfere with my recovery." I should probably start from the beginning, because this story isn't really about one email. It's about 27 years of loving someone so completely that you forget to save any love for yourself. When Lucas was born, I was 25 and married to my college sweetheart, David. We had this beautiful little house in Aurora with a white picket fence. David worked construction. I worked nights at the hospital, and we tag-teamed taking care of Lucas. Everything was perfect until David's accident when Lucas was 15. That night, holding my crying teenage son, I made a promise that would define the next 12 years of my life. Lucas would never want for anything. Not love, not support, not opportunities, nothing. Looking back now, I can see the exact moment I started disappearing. It was gradual at first, skipping girls' nights to help Lucas with homework, turning down dates because Lucas had a game, selling my grandmother's jewelry to pay for his SAT prep courses. When college applications came around, I sold our house and moved us into a tiny apartment so Lucas could attend Colorado State without debt. I told him it was an investment in our future, but really, it was me investing everything I had into the only person I had left. For 7 years, Lucas and I were a team. He'd call me every Sunday from college, telling me about his engineering classes, his friends, his dreams. During his senior year, he started mentioning this girl, Melissa, more and more. She was beautiful, he said, smart, ambitious. I was excited to meet her. This woman who made my son's voice light up over the phone. The first red flag should have been their engagement party. I spent 3 weeks planning it, taking vacation days to coordinate with caterers, booking the community center. Melissa barely acknowledged my efforts that night. When people asked about the beautiful decorations, she'd smile and say, "Lucas and I wanted something intimate," never mentioning that I'd spent 14 hours hand-folding those origami cranes. But Lucas looked happy, and that's all that mattered to me. The wedding planning was worse. Every suggestion I made was politely dismissed. Every tradition I mentioned was not really our style. When they decided to have the ceremony in Melissa's hometown in California, instead of Denver where Lucas grew up, I smiled and booked my plane ticket without complaint. I told myself this was normal. This was what happened when your son found love. You step back and let him build his new life. But standing in that hotel room in San Diego the night before the wedding, listening to Lucas laugh in the hallway with Melissa's family while I ate room service alone, I felt something crack inside my chest. It wasn't heartbreak exactly. It was the sound of a door closing. I just didn't know yet that I'd be standing on the wrong side of it. The wedding itself was beautiful. Melissa looked stunning. Lucas looked handsome in his grandfather's tuxedo. I sat in the 3rd row behind Melissa's extended family, watching my son promise his life to someone who seemed determined to erase mine from his story. During the reception, when they asked for a mother-son dance, Lucas danced with Melissa's mother first. That night, lying in my hotel bed, I should have seen what was coming. I should have recognized the pattern that was already forming. But hope is a stubborn thing, especially when it's wrapped around the person you love most in the world. I convinced myself that marriage was an adjustment period, that once they settled into their new life together, there would be room for me again. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was especially wrong about that. The exclusion started small, like most cruelties do. Sunday phone calls became Sunday texts, then every other Sunday texts, then silence, unless I initiated contact. Holiday invitations came with subtle suggestions that maybe this year I should take some time for myself instead of joining them. When I'd drive the 4 hours to Colorado Springs where they lived, I'd get exactly 90 minutes of stilted conversation in their pristine living room before Melissa would remember some urgent errand they needed to run. I started keeping a journal of our interaction, not out of malice, but out of confusion. I needed to understand what I was doing wrong. The entries got shorter and sadder as the months went by. The breaking point started with something beautiful. Lucas called me on a Wednesday evening in March, his voice excited and nervous. "Mom," he said, "we have news. Melissa's pregnant." I screamed with joy, literally screamed, startling my neighbor's cat who was lounging on my fire escape. I was going to be a grandmother. After 2 years of feeling like an unwelcome stranger in my son's life, finally here was something that would bring us back together. I should have known better. The pregnancy became another tool for exclusion. I wasn't allowed at doctor's appointments because Melissa got overwhelmed easily. I couldn't help with the nursery because they wanted to do it themselves. When I offered to throw a baby shower, Melissa's sister had already planned one. In California, of course. The night everything changed started like any other Wednesday. I was finishing my shift at the hospital, looking forward to my Thursday off, planning to drive down to see Lucas and Melissa. She was 36 weeks pregnant, and I hadn't seen them in over a month. I'd bought a crib mobile with little airplanes on it. Lucas had loved planes as a child, spent hours building model aircraft at our kitchen table. I thought maybe seeing it would remind him of those days, of us. My phone rang at 11:43 p.m. Unknown number far, which usually means either a wrong number or bad news. In my line of work, you learn to recognize the difference. This was bad news. "Is this Clara Martinez?" The voice was young, professional, tired. "This is Presbyterian, St. Joseph Hospital, in Denver. Your son, Lucas Martinez, was brought in tonight following a motor vehicle accident." The drive to the hospital was a blur of prayer and panic. Lucas had been driving back from a work conference in Boulder when a drunk driver ran a red light. He was stable but unconscious, suffering from a traumatic brain injury and internal bleeding. They had already performed emergency surgery to relieve pressure on his brain. Melissa was already there, they told me, along with her parents who had flown in from California. I ran through those hospital hallways like my life depended on it, because in many ways, it did. Lucas wasn't just my son. He was my purpose, my North Star, the reason I'd gotten up every morning for the past 27 years. I found Melissa in the waiting area, surrounded by her family. She looked up when she saw me, and for just a moment, I thought I saw relief in her eyes. We were both mothers now, I thought. Surely this tragedy would remind us that we were on the same side. But when I moved toward the ICU, Melissa stood up. "Clara," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I need to talk to you." She led me to a corner of the waiting room. "I know you want to see him, but the doctors said too much stimulation could be harmful. I think it's better if just immediate family stays for now." Immediate family. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had become a stranger in my own son's life, and now, in his most vulnerable moment, I was being told I wasn't immediate enough, wasn't family enough, to sit beside his bed. I looked at this woman who had been part of Lucas's life for 3 years, while I had been part of it for 27. And I realized that somehow, in trying to make space for their love, I had erased myself entirely. That's when I went home and found the email waiting for me. Lucas had regained consciousness for a few minutes, long enough to ask Melissa to send it. "Mom, Please don't come to the hospital. Your presence will upset Melissa, and that might interfere with my recovery. I'll call you when I'm feeling better." I read that email 17 times before I understood what it really said. It wasn't just asking me to stay away from the hospital. It was asking me to stay away from his life, permanently. It was asking me to disappear so completely that even his brush with death couldn't warrant my presence. It was asking me to accept that 27 years of love and sacrifice had earned me exactly nothing, not even the right to hold his hand while he fought for his life. For the first time in 2 years, I got angry. Not sad, not confused, not hurt, angry. I thought about David, about how proud he would have been of the man Lucas became, and how horrified he would be at the man Lucas had allowed himself to become. I thought about every holiday I'd spent alone, every birthday where my gift was accepted with polite detachment, every time I'd smiled and pretended that being systematically erased from my son's life was somehow normal. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 52-year-old woman who had become invisible. Somewhere along the way, in my desperate desire to avoid being the overbearing mother-in-law, I had taught them that I didn't matter. I had accepted scraps and called them love, but I wasn't gone. I was still here, still breathing, still loving my son with every fiber of my being. And love, real love, doesn't disappear just because someone finds it inconvenient. Love shows up, especially when it's not wanted, especially when it's needed most. I deleted that email without responding. I took a shower, put on my best dress, the navy blue one I'd worn to Lucas's college graduation, and drove back to the hospital. This time, I wasn't going as the apologetic mother who had overstayed her welcome. I was going as the woman who had earned her place at that bedside through 27 years of unwavering love and sacrifice. The ICU was quiet when I arrived. Visiting hours technically over bras, but I'd worked in hospitals long enough to know that rules bend when you carry yourself with enough purpose. I walked past the nurses, station with confidence, past Melissa's parents dozing in the waiting room chairs, straight to room 314, where my son lay connected to machines. Melissa was there, of course, holding his hand, whispering something I couldn't hear. She looked up when I entered, surprise and anger flashing across her face in equal measure. "Clara, I thought we agreed." "We didn't agree to anything," I said quietly, moving to the other side of Lucas's bed. "You made a decision, and I accepted it. But I'm done accepting decisions that exclude me from my son's life." Lucas looked so young lying there, tubes and wires connecting him to various machines. His face was swollen from the surgery, but I could still see the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who made me Mother's Day cards with crayon drawings of the two of us holding hands. This was my child, the person I had loved before he even took his first breath. "You're going to upset him," Melissa said, but her voice had lost some of its authority. For the first time in 2 years, I wasn't backing down, and we both knew it. "He's unconscious," I replied, reaching for his other hand. His skin was warm, alive, and I felt something settle in my chest that had been restless for months. "But even if he wasn't, I'm his mother. I was his mother when you were still learning his middle name. I was his mother when he had nightmares and called for me at 3 a.m. I was his mother when his father died, and I was all he had left in the world." I sat down in the chair beside his bed, still holding his hand. "I'm not going anywhere. Melissa, not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again. You can call security if you want, but I'm a registered nurse at this hospital, and more importantly, I'm his emergency contact. I've been his emergency contact since the day he was born." For 3 hours, we sat in silence on opposite sides of that hospital bed. Melissa's parents came and went, shooting me pointed looks that I ignored completely. Nurses checked Lucas's vitals, and several of them recognized me, nodding with professional courtesy. At 4 a.m., Melissa finally spoke. "He really does love you," she said softly. "He talks about you more than you know." I looked at her across the bed. This woman who had somehow convinced my son that loving his wife meant diminishing his mother. For the first time, I saw past my own hurt to recognize something familiar in her eyes. Fear. "I'm not trying to take him away from you," I said. "I never was. I just want to be part of his life, part of your life. When this baby comes, they're going to need grandparents, not sides to choose between." Lucas's hand squeezed mine then, just barely, but enough for both of us to notice. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, but alive, searching. "Mom," he whispered, his voice rough from the breathing tube they'd removed earlier. "I'm here, baby," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm right here." He tried to sit up, wincing, and I gently pressed him back down. "Melissa?" he asked, looking around with confusion. "She's here too," I assured him. "We're both here." Over the next week, as Lucas recovered, something fundamental shifted in our family dynamic. Melissa and I started talking. Really talking. For the first time since I'd known her. She admitted that she'd felt threatened by how close Lucas and I were. That her own relationship with her mother was strained and competitive. And she'd assumed all mother-son relationships were the same. She thought loving me meant Lucas would have less love for her. I understood then that I'd been fighting the wrong battle. This wasn't about competing for Lucas's love. There was enough love to go around. This was about teaching people how to treat you, about refusing to disappear just because your presence felt inconvenient to someone else. When Lucas came home from the hospital, he called me every day. Not because Melissa wasn't taking good care of him, but because he realized that keeping me at arm's length hadn't protected anyone. It had just deprived all of us of the love and support we could have been sharing. The baby arrived 3 weeks later, a beautiful little girl they named Emma. When Melissa went into labor, Lucas called me from the delivery room. I was there within an hour, pacing the halls with Lucas's father-in-law, 2 grandparents-to-be sharing the universal experience of anxious love. When they placed Emma in my arms for the first time, she opened her dark eyes and looked right at me, and I felt my heart expand in ways I didn't know were still possible. This tiny person was part of Lucas, part of me, part of a love story that had almost ended before it really began. Melissa asked me to stay for the first week after they brought Emma home, not because she couldn't handle it alone, but because she wanted Emma to know all her family from the very beginning. I taught Melissa the lullabies I used to sing to Lucas, the ones my mother had sung to me. We took turns walking the floors with Emma during those long nights when new babies confused day and night. Looking back now, I realized that email, "Your presence will upset her," was actually a gift. It forced me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for 2 years. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just fear dressed up as sacrifice. By accepting my own erasure, I had taught everyone around me that I was erasable. But here's what I learned, standing beside that hospital bed, holding my son's hand while he fought for his life. You can't love someone so much that you disappear. You can't care for people by accepting less than you deserve. You can't build healthy relationships by pretending your own needs don't exist. Today, Emma is 6 months old, and she lights up when she sees me. Lucas calls me twice a week, and Melissa and I text regularly about everything from teething remedies to weekend plans. We're planning Emma's first Christmas, and for the first time in 3 years, I'm not wondering whether I'll be invited. I'm helping plan it. I'm not sharing this story because I think every family conflict has a happy ending, or because standing up for yourself always results in immediate change. Some relationships can't be saved, and some people will never respect your boundaries, no matter how clearly you set them. I'm sharing this because somewhere out there, there's another mother reading this, who has made herself so small that she's practically invisible. There's another woman who has confused love with self-erasure, who has accepted crumbs and called them a feast. There's someone who needs to hear that your love is not a burden, your presence is not an imposition, and your place in your family's life is not negotiable. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your presence matters. And if the people in your life have forgotten that, it's not your job to remind them by disappearing. It's your job to remind them by showing up. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt erased by people who claim to love you, please share it. Let's start a conversation about what love really looks like, about the difference between making space for people and disappearing for them. Like this post if you believe that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that let the right people in and keep the wrong energy out. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be ignored. Sometimes standing your ground is the only way to find your way back home.